Hello! Right, today's tutorial is going to be based on values and the transitions between values, which is quite important for selling form, and how you might go about studying that in a kind of simple, quick way. This is just a diagram on cast shadows and form shadows, which are going to be important in kind of selling the form of an object. So cast shadows are where light is blocked by an object, which makes them hard, whereas form shadows, as you'll see when I start smudging it out, is where an object kind of turns away from the direction of the light and it creates a soft transition to shadow. Now you can produce this with kind of a soft round brush like this here, but I find it much more effective just to use the smudge brush in Photoshop. Now I know that Procreate has its own smudge tool, but I'm not sure about other software packages, so just be aware of that. Now you'll see why these are so important, because without the contrast between soft shadows, coarse shadows, and hard cast shadows, form is quite hard to sell. So here we are, we've got three examples of statues. Now statues and busts are quite good to study in terms of looking at this kind of stuff, because they have no local colour. Unlike a human face, there's no discoloration where there's stubble, there's no rosy cheeks to worry about in terms of value, there's no different coloured hair or eyebrows or anything else. It's all the same local colour, so you can just purely look at the effect that shadows and light has on the face. Now what I'm doing here is I'm just going through and I'm just highlighting with red core shadows. So those are shadows where the form turns away from the light. And you'll notice that every one that I'm highlighting is soft. Some of the ones I'll highlight won't be soft, and that's because the turn away from the light is quite harsh, on a harsh angle. So even though it is, if you theoretically zoomed in really far, it would be a soft transition. It doesn't visibly show as one. Even something as simple as that little shadow that the brow's casting on the eyelid there, that's quite important. And we're just going to go through, and some of them are more obvious, like that forehead that I just highlighted. It's quite a large, soft transition because the light is laying low and kind of parallel with the plane that's turning away from it. And one thing to note is that these core shadows and cast shadows tend to appear in the same place. So ordinarily and kind of on average, you're going to get top-down lighting with portraiture, especially if it's outside, or just lights in rooms tend to be on the ceiling, right? So what you get is the tops of things, like the tops of the lips and the tops of the eyebrows. They're going to be core shadows, and they're going to cast some really nice hard shadows onto the upper cheek, onto the upper chin, and just below the nose and the top lip. That might be the shape that the nose would cast if it were in a different lighting scenario. So now what I'm going to do just to illustrate this point further is Photoshop has a load of kind of arty filters that are usually pretty useless, but you can use the Cutout Filter and set it to 3 values or layers, and it will just simplify it for us, and it might become a lot more clear where these borders are if you're struggling to see them at this point. And it's that kind of thing with artistic mileage where the more you do it, the more apparent these will become. You'll look at an image and you'll just see the borders between light and dark, and you'll go, okay, that's a core shadow, that's a cast shadow. And you can see that it lines up pretty well with what I've already drawn, which is good. And now we're going to put it into practice. So the first thing I'm going to do, and I'm zooming over so you can see, is I'm just going to separate my layers into 3. We're going to have black, grey and white. And this is important, again, for something that happens later on. So you want to make sure that you keep them separate. Because that's how I'm going to add colour. If you don't want to add colour, then there's not much pressure, but generally it's a good idea to work in a non-destructive way, so that if you make a mistake, you can get rid of that black without worrying about scraping into the white or the grey, for example. I like to do these with a hard edge brush, and you'll see why. And I recommend it because you get these very nicely defined, kind of strong shapes that maybe you'd be tempted to kind of rub away at those if you were using a softer brush. Kind of forces you to be confident, you know. So we're just going to get in large areas of shadow. It doesn't matter if they're core or cast, don't worry about that at this point. Just get in the big areas of shadow. I like to fill in mid-tone grey first, depending on the image. This one seems pretty appropriate for that. So you can just fill in mid-tone grey and then get some shadows. You'll notice I'm not being very careful with this. I've sped it up ×2, so you're looking at ×2 sped up footage here, but I mean even the original was only, I think, a 15 to 18 minute study, and that's while I was pausing, so I'd have time to explain in the audio. And you'll notice I've kind of made use of the background there as well to silhouette the character without literally drawing a big outline. That's the hard round smudge tool, which is super useful for correcting mistakes, you know, on the fly. I don't want to have to go into the liquify menu because it's going to slow my computer down and it's going to slow me down while I'm trying to just paint. So we're just going to get more of these marks in. They don't have to be clean, they really don't have to. Just make them kind of confident, you know? I was talking about this last video, and it's confidence is key. You can do something horribly off, but if you do it confidently, it'll look a lot better for it. I seem to remember there was a large anatomical mistake here where I'm going to move the entire chin down. Now, at the moment we're just using black and grey. And it still reads, you can still see a face in there. You can see that that works as an image. But the white layer, now it's quite important, and I think I'm going to switch to it in a second. And it's important for when we get to colouring the image in a second. And I'm going to show you a really easy way to colour the image, so you don't have to worry about that at all. So now we're just going to get all this lovely side lighting from the original image, and we're going to plop it on in big chunks. We're not going to worry about little details, just think about which planes of the face are going to be facing in that direction. Just fill them in. I know it might sound easy for me to say this because I do these quite regularly, but if you do these regularly as well, you'll slap them in. You'll just slap in the big kind of swathes of light and dark without much worry, because this isn't about precision so much, it's about just getting those values down and the difference between values. So that reads quite nicely. So going back to the core and the cast shadow stuff, and going back to these statues and thinking about how they work, we're just going to identify which shadows are core, which shadows are cast, and we're going to grab a smudge tool. I use this down here. I use Smudge Clouds from John Park's tool set. But you could do this in theory with a soft round brush. There's no reason why you couldn't, or any other way you can think of smudging things. These are just a couple of different types of smudge brush. But this is why we keep the layers separate, and especially later on, is because I can now go in and, just like I said, you know, the top of the eyebrows, I'm just going to smudge them out. It's important that you realise that the smudge really doesn't have to be huge. Even if you just smudge it a tiny bit, your eye's going to pick up on the fact that it's just a little bit softer than those really hard shadows. So with this kind of lighting, we're looking at the top of things and the kind of left side of things being a bit soft. And we're leaving those cast shadows hard, you see. Under the chin, it's hard. Under the eyebrows is hard, and under the nose it's going to stay hard. And then you can go and you can do the same with your whites. Generally the whites don't really have hard casts unless it's an extremely small bright point light or area light, but you shouldn't have to worry about that. So a lot of these are going to be just completely hard or completely soft. I mean, it's completely hard on the shirt because it's a change of local colour rather than lighting so much. So that's fine. Now that's kind of finished as an image. What we can do now is, I'll show you hopefully, we can grab an image, right, and we can just mess it up. This is the fun bit where you get to play around, right? And this is going to be testament to how important values are when you're painting an image, because I didn't have to choose this one, it was just a random painting that I'd done a couple of months ago or whatever, and you can saturate it, get some nice hue variation in there. And I'm now just going to go through all my layers. I think I should show you, yeah. I'm just going to paste the image above every single layer and then clip it. Clip one to white, clip one to grey, and clip one to black. And you can already see the faces kind of coming out there with the darker greys. Might look a mess. It does look a mess. But you'll see. You'll see. So what we're going to do is we want to return that clipped painting back to the original value of black. And I'll show you what I mean. The levels adjustment window doesn't screen share, sadly, so I just took a screenshot of it. But this is our current levels graph, and the blue is what black is. It's kind of just furthest left. So what you want to do is, on the black layer, you want to match the levels to get it darker. Without making this too complicated, you just kind of wangle the things around until it gets dark enough that those shapes return with enough contrast, and then you do the same with white. I'm just changing the hue here because it was kind of a sickly yellow. And you can see that we have an image. Not only do we have an image, we have a coloured image. It's not very well coloured, but it's a great starting point. And this is what, 15 minutes of work? So here I am, and I'm showing you what you can do after this point. You can plot in local colour that you didn't have before. So we're talking about those kind of greys and cooler colours of the chin and stubble, the warmer colours in the mid-region. Obviously the eyes are going to be a bit cooler. And that's that. Now I hope you enjoyed. Kind of a quick one. I want to start producing these videos a bit quicker. Get more of them out there, but thank you for watching. If you have any questions, you can message me on Instagram, which I'll put in the description. But I hope that some people try this. I found it very, very useful, personally. So, see you around.